Joining us now from Cape Town to discuss effective education is business leader Dr Mamphela Ramphele. A very warm welcome to you, Doctor, and thank you so much for joining us. I would like to jump into it and first start with one of the things that you have coined. You talk about education activism. Just talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that term.
There is no country in the world in today's knowledge-based economies that are very competitive that can succeed without a high-quality, functional, and effective educational system. We in South Africa are presiding over a collapsed public education system, and it is going to take activism by everybody to get it back on track. We need a more active, efficient, and effective government. We need, even more importantly, an active citizenry that's going to hold the government accountable for making sure that it delivers on the promises of effective governance. We need an activist private sector, because the private sector right now is bleeding. It is sitting with 800,000 vacancies for skilled workers. And we have in the environment 600,000 plus graduates who are not being employed, in part because they don't have the skills, but some have the skills, but the private sector is not ready to invest in South Africa because of the uncertainties in the environment. So we need activism also on the wider governance arena to create an environment for our education system to be more effective. At the moment, we are presiding over governance failure, the failure of our government to run and manage an effective education system.
Doctor, what is
18 years after the dawn of our democracy. It is a scandal. It is a betrayal of all those young people who rejected gutter education in 1976. We today have an education system in many ways which is worse than the gutter education that those young people were against. Yes, today's education is more accessible to more kids, but the quality is appalling for the majority of South Africans.
So, Doctor, what is the move now? Because one of the things that has happened is that government now has two ministries that's overseeing education, where it used to be one, and that hasn't even seemed to make any kind of progress in dealing with the problem. So, what's the next move now? What do South Africans do, whether it's citizens, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the government itself, to at least start to move into a positive direction to change the picture of where we are right now?
Having two ministries in itself is not a bad thing, but the quality of the leadership of our ministries is a big problem. We now are sitting with Limpopo province, which doesn't have textbooks for children middle of the year. We have an Eastern Cape government that doesn't have teachers in the classrooms for most of the schools, in addition to not having basic textbooks. Many warehouses have been found to be fully stocked whilst people in classrooms have. So we've got massive management failure. We've got management failure at the higher education level, with a minister who's busy campaigning rather than running the show to make sure that we've got a well-funded, well-led, and appropriate higher education system for this country.
But Doctor, money.
The first thing that needs to be the focus for all of us as citizens is to insist on a functional, well-managed education system. And that is a problem that citizens can solve by simply making demands. Second, we need a private sector that's going to be more activist. They must stop sitting there and wringing their hands in horror about not having the skilled people to do the work that needs to be done. They need to join hands with civil society to demand the quality of leadership that should be running our education system, both at the basic level and the higher education level. We need the vice chancellors of all of the higher education institutions to also come to the party. So too, we need teachers and instructional leaders, principals in many of the schools to also come to the party to demand that we have adequate facilities, adequate materials, and the kind of environment that encourages excellence and equity in our education system.
Doctor, I want to ask you a little bit
more
about...
importantly, we need to have parents and pupils and ordinary citizens demanding excellence and equity in our education system.
Doctor, I want to ask you a little bit about the youth wage subsidy and what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think the youth wage subsidy is an instrument. I think we need to look much deeper than that. We have 4 million young people who are not in school, not in training, and not in employment. And that includes the 600,000 plus graduates. So the problem is more fundamental than just simply providing a youth subsidy. We also have, alongside this problem of unemployed youth, a SETA system, sectoral education and training authorities, that are absorbing 1% of payroll every year, which amounts to something like 4 or 5 billion rand. Now, in the apartheid era, we used to have a very discriminatory, racist apprenticeship system, but it produced 30,000 artisans every year. Today, the SETA systems, with these huge funds, only produces about 10,000 very poor quality artisans. So the first fundamental change that citizens, the private sector, the government, and everybody should come together to demand is an abolition of this wasteful, corrupt, and ineffectual SETA system. So the 5 billion a year that we are currently spending on buildings and paying people who are not producing the artisans that we need should be redirected to the private sector, industry by industry, so that they can be held to account, like they were in the past, to train the artisans. The artisans then will be trained on the job. But we need to go even further back and make sure that our schools offer our young people the option. In grade 10, you can take a stream that leads you to dance and music, or a stream that leads you to construction industry.
Doctor, I would love to continue this conversation. We've totally run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. I would really like to speak more, because this is obviously a really huge issue for South Africa, and there's just been so much coming out. I would really like to spend some more time, but we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. That was prominent South African business leader Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, and she was talking education activism.